Okay, welcome everybody to the Trails and Conservation virtual engagement session or focus group. Thank you for being here. I recognize that a few of you are really well familiar with the project already. I have a presentation that I give on this, but I mean, I want to know if you want it or not. A few of you know this really well. A few of you I'm not so sure about. So, what do you think? Rick, Marissa, Bill, do you want a short presentation or do you just want to jump into discussion?
No, I would. I'd like some background because I don't know this section of I'm not a big rail trail person except to help
Yeah.
locally.
Okay, awesome. Let's do that then. And this will give Ella more time to work on her um, emergency response. So, all right. Don't want to do that. There we go. Slideshow. Okay. I want to just take a few minutes to tell you about the Parkersburg to Pittsburgh Trail Corridor and the regional master plan that we are working on. Cycle Forward was selected to assist the National Road Heritage Corridor and its many partners in producing a master plan for the corridor. I don't know why I have this right here, but I will just say this is one in a series of engagement sessions. I hope that you might be interested in some of the upcoming sessions, which you can see listed here. And, you can find information on all of these at p2ptrails.org, or you can just ask me about them specifically if you'd like. But let me make sure that you know about the corridor. It's made up of 8 existing trails. This corridor spans 9 counties across Pennsylvania and West Virginia. You can see the trails named here, but as the name suggests, we're trying to connect Parkersburg to Pittsburgh. This corridor is largely built, but we do have sections that are not yet complete in Fayette County, Pennsylvania, as well as in the Fairmont area, and we have sections of trail that are subpar as well. So the corridor is a work in progress, and I want to state that the master plan we're working on is not about trail construction. It's about leveraging trails for community benefit. But I hope this gives you a bit of context on the trails and the corridor itself. So yeah, there was an ARC Arise grant awarded to National Road Heritage Corridor, and matching funds were provided by the Just Transition Fund, the Benedum Foundation, and the City of Fairmont. And all of the partners you see listed here are like partners on paper and very actively involved in working with us on creating this master plan. Everything we're doing builds on past successes. Along the P2P, there's a feasibility study you may or may not have heard of from 2018. We're building upon that. We're building upon work that the to Trails Conservancy has done and studying community and economic potential. And of course, just years of collaboration through the Industrial Heartland Trails Coalition and other regional trail-based collaborations. So we are building upon what's been. The purpose of this master plan is to develop a community-based implementation plan that will unlock community and economic development potential for the corridor. Essentially, I'm not going to read Kent's quote here, but you
Please don't.
know, there are parts of the system that have not met the hoped for economic and community development potential, right, Kent?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Almost none of it.
So almost none of it, right. So there's work to be done. You can't just build the trails. You have to plan for how they will be integrated into communities and become part of the larger outdoor economy. So that's the work that we're planning for. These are our goals. I hate to run through them all, but we're looking at physical infrastructure and how to really have the right infrastructure along trails and connect trails into communities. We're looking at workforce development, investment, marketing, and how do we manage success over time. We are very focused on equitable community engagement, and making sure that we bring everybody along with us. And we are very seriously trying to figure out how to position the P2P as a national model for recreation-based economic development. So we do the planning now, and are hoping for those outcomes over time. This is another look at some of those same goals. And if you just, look to the bottom of the slide, you're going to see what our project values are. Everything that we're doing is values based and rooted in respect and dignity for everybody who engages in this process, no matter what they think about trails. We are centering communities in this work, and we are, of course, I'm going to come to the third one last, but regional collaboration is a major part of, why we're doing this work, and acceptance of not knowing. We are a community of learners, and we're trying to figure out what will work well in this region, what will be authentic to this region, and position the P2P corridor for prosperity. And, part of that is not knowing, but looking for the answers as we go. This is a look at what we're doing. A lot of stakeholder community engagement. We're just on the front end of that. We're working to build a better understanding of the market, and out of that will come an economic development strategy and a branding and marketing strategy. We are focusing on infrastructure. Right now, a member of our team is out biking the North Bend Trail, trying to assess the trail and its amenities and its infrastructure. And, that's all being documented all along the way. And we will create, recommendations coming out of that. And then if you look at the fourth item, it's implementation. It's what do you do then after we have this master plan? And, the group's hope is to be able to get implementation funding and to develop strategies that will allow this work to be maintained and sustained over time. So that's a lot really quickly. Before we get into our specific topic today, I just want to pause and see, are there questions? Rick, Bill,
I've,
Marissa?
I've got one about conservation.
Yeah, okay. Well,
So you could incorporate, a bigger conservation vision outside of the corridor or link to the corridor, as part of the corridor kind of thing. Integrate that thinking. So parks along there, places for people to stop and camp, protected areas that you can interpret, looking up, see that big intact forest producing all that clean water, things like that. But yeah, I'd have to think about more how it goes into the different goals, but you could probably a component of every one of those goals, I'll bet you in some way or fashion without overdoing it. You know what I'm saying? Hitting
I
people over the head with conservation. Nobody wants that. But you could
and
integrate
nobody
quite a bit.
nobody wants what?
Too much conservation in West Virginia. It's not about all about it's about, this is an economic development program, like you said. That's how you're measuring things. So
Yeah, it
yeah,
is.
it'd be fun to think about that. Look at the corridor and think about the larger conservation landscape, as they say.
Yeah, I appreciate that point. And, I a part of what I don't know how much conservation stuck out, but it's one of the actually I think I sort of skimmed over the like focus areas for the project, and conservation is one of them.
Good.
And I'm going to go back to that slide.
Yeah.
You can see where you see objectives. Those are kind of like focuses, so land and natural resource conservation. And I think that all of our team members believe
There
that
it is.
that
Yep, yep,
you
yep.
you
I did
can't
see
be a
it there.
national you can't be a national model for this kind of work if you are not taking conservation seriously. And
Mm,
so, that's sort of like how we are approaching it, even if the community and economic development goals are front and center. So yeah, that's why we're having this conversation today. So yeah, let's keep going on it. Are there other questions about the project before I move forward? Okay. So I think you all know we're treating this entire month as Heart Trails Month. We just want to get people feeling excited about the trails along the corridor and just inject some enthusiasm onto the front end of the project. So we have different things going. We have a web form where people can write a love letter to their favorite trail, as an example, and we have different events, and online, indoors, outdoors, all taking place. These are some of the things you can do to get involved. I hope you're following along on Facebook and Instagram, and following our newsletter as well. And this is just a look at, this slide's a little bit outdated, but our events calendar and some of the things that we have going. So I think that's it on the slides. Oops, we have two more people in the waiting room. Let's get them into the room, get them connected. Okay. Greg, Ashton, hello. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Sorry, I'm joining the call late. I'm just going to kind of listen.
Yeah,
Same,
no
same
problem.
here.
What's going on today?
Yeah, happy to have you here. I went through a presentation on the what the master plan project is and what the P2P trail corridor is. And Ashton, if you want, when we're done, I can stay on with you and tell you a little bit more about that to make sure that you have context. But essentially, we're planning for the future of the Parkersburg to Pittsburgh Trail corridor and how to leverage more community and economic development. And today's session is all about conservation and how we make sure that that is a part of the work as well. So, bit of
And
context for you, and just to let you both know, we are recording, and we'll be posting these on our website so that people who missed the conversation can listen in at a later time.
So I joined late, and I apologize, but did you already have a meeting and I missed it completely, or is this it?
We started at noon, so you're here at just the right time. Like I said, I can tell you more at the other side of the discussion if you want to know more about the project, but we're just about to get into some discussion.
Okay, good, good. Didn't miss anything.
No, no, just a little bit of setup.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. Yep, you bet. So let me go ahead. I want to start with a poll, a couple of polls actually. So the first one is about your hopes for when it comes to trails. The question is, what do you most hope for when it comes to trails? And I'm forcing you into a single choice. So I'll give you a few minutes to answer that question.
I would answer this differently if I were answering as a professional, like employed by a organization, or if I was a unemployed person.
Oh, okay. So am I
Or
hearing you saying if you were unemployed, you would be hoping for business growth and job opportunities?
no, I
Okay.
was thinking about like retired unemployed, not like I'm looking for a job unemployed. A place to recreate and socialize if I were not working for a land trust.
Okay,
But I
got
know
it.
that conservation through trails obviously is so. What hat am
Yeah.
I wearing for your purposes here?
Rick, I can never quite keep up with you. Your brain is just like firing it like in all of the very best ways.
Huh,
Um,
thank you.
yeah, you bet. Um, so looking at the responses we have, right? Like sort of across the board, a place to recreate and socialize, to be able to get from place to place, and conservation through trails. Great, thank you. Let's
But
do,
they're all worthy though,
yeah,
almost
they are,
equally valuable.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
hard. It's hard to pick one for sure. All of them, really. Right.
yeah. Well, keep in mind what your response was, and we're going to do another poll. So that was what are you hoping for? The second question is how do we get there? And again, you have to choose one. Ignore choice number six. That's something I have to get corrected in the poll here. Okay, we've heard from 7 out of 8 of you. Let's go ahead and share the poll. So this is a little bit different from our last meeting, I think. But improving trail-related infrastructure and amenities and town connections is far ahead of all of the other options, followed by engaging and involving local people and businesses. I think the last time that one was most selected. So thanks for taking a moment. Does anyone want to react to this?
The the notable lack of answers about the economic development plan is interesting because we're all planners. We all write plans. We all participate in planning. We all push planning,
Hmm.
including myself. I write a lot of them. That's interesting
So
to
It's
me.
interesting.
I kind of have shifted. I know I shifted because I did at one time put plan the plan because, but one of the things I'm not sure is on or included in that options is that I'm not in the business world. I don't know what is needed, what resources are needed to support businesses. Truly, I know that I have more power to impact trail and trail infrastructure than I do changing the resources and policies that support business recruitment and marketing and growth, So there's a component to this that is, you know, what does the state, what is the state, and this is coming off of the outdoor economy summits, right? But what is it that businesses are vulnerable to all kinds of change, and especially in the outdoor recreation world, and whether or not West Virginia is really supporting them in the lean times or in the ability to get off the ground is something I don't really understand or know. And so I don't know whether that's a plan or whether that's just understanding the current conditions and where our weakest points are on that.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Ella.
And it might be just a thought, might be different in a place like Morgantown than it is in the rural areas too, because we
Very.
do have a lot of like
Very,
entrepreneurial support stuff going on and people who can coach you. And, there's stuff going on here that just doesn't exist in the middle of nowhere.
very, at least with awareness maybe and people available to direct you. But I don't,
Right.
I
Right.
do think that they certainly overlap. and that it's not, it sometimes is got more bureaucracy and paperwork that you have to do in Morgantown to start a business and or rent, you're renting property than you would maybe in rural community where you might be able to purchase and start a business on your own property. I don't know.
The good news is that all of those options are things that we are building into the master planning process. So we're taking a multi-pronged approach, but are curious to know what like we want to take these questions everywhere we go over the course of this project and and see where we land, what people prioritize, both in terms of what they're hoping for and how they think we can achieve that more prosperous, more connected future. So yeah, thanks for taking a few minutes to think about that, and I think that's a good way to get us into the conversation around conservation. Um, if you read the description, we say that all of the best outdoor hubs take conservation seriously and protect the places that are making it possible to enjoy the outdoors. So that's what we're here to talk about. And I'm just going to ask you, what brought you to this session? And I invite you to come off of mute, um, share share your camera if you're able to, and let's talk about it.
I'll answer. I hate silence. Sorry.
Oh,
It intersects with my job. I like Ella, we both work with trails and green spaces, and it's just conservation. They're part of conservation. People use the term synonymously almost, trails and outdoor recreation becomes conservation. It's not like that in New York necessarily. They kind of split things off and think about it in a more nuanced way. Here, it's like they're one and the same almost. So, and they can be too. And that's the neat thing about them. They can be. They don't have to be, but they can be. And just one note about Morgantown. We're in a bubble. I work in this wonderful bubble in a sense. So many smart people here that are so committed. But so we've got our downtown, which has had a lot of struggles, and the rail trails go right through it. Deckers Creek up one side and Mon River on the other. And it's like, there's the downtown. And you know what we're pushing for? More conservation. We want to turn that whole lower piece of Deckers Creek into a big green space. That's not enough. Most towns would be so happy with rail trails if they'd be like, we're done. We're not. We're just getting started here. All that green space will be linked up and there'll be a green belt. So we're in the bubble, like I said. I'm not saying this is representative or what anybody should adopt or whatever. It takes people. It takes people, and they got to be aligned philosophically and understand how much conservation contributes to quality of life and economic development and all the other things.
think
You all know that.
I think I'm just leaning into what you're saying, Rick, is that um, part of the trail experience, um, is going out birding or fishing or getting on the river for the water trail or experiencing the deer and the turtles and the wildflowers. It is a place to build the stewardship of conservation, the empathy and the concern for our environment, our water quality, our air quality, and habitat for wildlife. And I think that whether people are out there to train for a race or to do something, like to get to their work, whatever their intent, their experience is just kind of fully incorporated into having that experience with nature. And so, just like a drive to work on a road, you kind of get the vibes of and the emotional kickback of whether that's a drudgery or whether that's a uplifting experience. And so I think that we've seen like our watersheds impacted by acid mine drainage and our rivers impacted by, well, we still have problems on our river where every dam is a floating landfill behind it with litter and, debris. And so I think that we're still struggling with those past industry and as much as we can bring attention to those weaknesses in our quality of life or whatever and in our forest health, the better, So I think that trails can be a vehicle for that too.
Yeah, thanks for calling that out. So there's an interpretive educational opportunity that comes along with trails if we take it, if we use it. Ella, you one thing that you said, around, trails take people into natural areas and provide an opportunity for that connection. And that had me thinking, wondering about the opposite of that. Like, if we're not intentional about it, is there a chance that we just use, rail trails as playgrounds and, you know, um, uh, don't become stewards? Like, I don't know. It's not really well phrased, but um, how intentional do we need to be in making this connection and regarding conservation?
Well, conservation just doesn't happen by itself. It has to be intentional and it has to be strategic. And that means that it has to be political. And in order to move that policy in the direction we want it to go in, we have to have people who are advocating for that policy, that positive policy, with legislators and decision makers. And the best way to engage a greater number of people is to get more people out on our trails and in our nature and experiencing the outdoors in a way that makes them cherish it and want to speak up on behalf of conservation with their representatives. So it's a numbers game.
Yeah. Well, let's go with that idea of cherishing trails and nature, right? What do we build in to this master plan that makes that outcome more likely? That people go onto our trails and they cherish the experience in the spaces.
I think access is really important.
Yeah.
Ease of access. So I would love to talk to Kent more about what he said because I see it very differently, which is not right or wrong, just very, very differently. And I think just getting people out there more with even if they don't read an interpretive sign for reasons that Ella was talking about better than I can about just when you travel place, if you're riding your bike into town, you have an amazing experience and you arrive at work a lot more relaxed and feeling great. And there's no intention there. It's just like I used the rail trail this morning. I saw a green heron or whatever. So, but
Well,
both. I mean, you do need signs too. It's not a one or the other. It's not, it's just a different kind of angle, perspective, whatever.
I think the intention is in the planning and how we get people
Yes,
to get
agreed.
out there, right?
Totally agree. Yeah. And to me, it like translates into access. That's one of the things that I deal with a lot is how to get people, out into the woods as easily, seamlessly as possible. And that, has to do with geography and where people are. The closer they are, the easier it is and blah, blah, blah. So,
And I'm
mm.
gonna approach it from a direct service standpoint, just where my profession or professional. I'm sorry, I'm getting a feedback on my audio. I
You have
apologize.
two windows open there, Marissa,
Yeah.
and that's why your feedback is there.
What is it? I'm sorry.
Do you have your phone and your internet or your
I do not. I do not. I don't, and I'm not sure why the Zoom is not being kind to me today.
Maybe I can remove this second window
that's
here.
that's what I would suggest, Amy.
Okay. Okay, Marissa, go ahead.
Hey, that's much better. Thank you so much.
Yep.
So I'm going to approach it from my professional side in the direct service. And I kind of agree with all of everything that you're saying. For me, it's an education piece and moving it back to the conservation and where you kind of transitioned the conversation, Amy, of, the flip side of that. And so, yes, I think getting people out there is super important, but I think that from the conservation side, understanding that trails don't have to be more. Does that make sense? So the trail in itself and the green space is enough. What we are from a municipality and municipal recreation, what I'm seeing a lot of right now that the trail itself now isn't enough. We need to build, we need to plan for more intentional spaces. And I'm not saying it's bad either way, because I do think that brings more folks out. But in relation to conservation, I feel like that is then, we're losing green spaces. There's more concrete. And I know rail trail itself is asphalt, but then those for me, when you're out there and kind of what you're saying, Rick, and getting people into the woods, getting them out into nature, how do we focus on that and balance both parts of that, the development side, but also the sustainable recreation, passive versus active recreation? And as we bring more users to the trail, that yes, transportation, but then just the experience of being out there in nature that well, there's now deer running in front of me when I'm biking. Okay, but that's an okay thing, right? And so, or is it? And the balancing of those user groups is, I think, for me, what brought me to this session specifically is that, um, how what's that shared use look like, and how do we balance that with the education portion, um, of those users? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And I think you just told me or reminded me. I just had a little aha moment, which is that you probably have like the busiest like 2 miles, and I'm just saying 2 miles because I'm picturing like the heart of the Caperton Trail
Sure.
of the entire corridor, and that might include the portion that comes into the city of Pittsburgh. I don't know this for sure, but just whenever I am down on the Caperton Trail, I just see how active of a space it is. And so I can appreciate that you are trying to balance all of this. But does anyone else want to react to what Marissa shared?
Well, if you're talking about rural Doddridge or Ritchie counties, I can tell you that appreciating nature is a lot easier if you have access to water and restrooms.
Yes.
Mm,
Okay.
amenities.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think at like access, we need to look at what are the barriers to why people aren't getting out on the trail. And
Mhm.
and that may be the amenity level
Yep.
that we're at.
If
And
there's no place to get lunch, not
right,
right.
if you don't feel
There's no
safe,
parking,
if you don't feel safe, or if
all
you
of
don't
those
feel
things.
like it's you know, there's enough people out there and you feel like you're going to be too alone. Like I relish aloneness on trail, but
And if you're out there with a
I
baby
think that there's
stroller and
other
there's a motorcycle coming at you, it's not a good experience either.
right.
So, it's those kinds of things, the enforcement, the amenities, that if they're done properly, really enhance the experience. If you don't have those amenities, it's not going to be as good an experience. And on the other hand, if you try to encourage businesses to serve the rail trail and the rail trail isn't well maintained and there's no good signage on the rail trail, that's going to be a bad experience too. So it's sort of a chicken and egg thing where you have to develop the trail and the amenities sort of hand in hand. And that's what this plan, I hope, will help us figure out how to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Marissa,
Oh,
I, Marissa, I heard you like just sort of like working through the 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 many different things that you have to be thinking about from a municipal perspective. Like what's the thing that you definitely want us um to take away from your comments and that you want us to really be thinking about
I
in this
think it's
work?
just playing on, with that conservation theme and where, I think that the rail trail does drive, conservation. It does, and it encourages us to, right, Rick, to protect some of those additional green spaces, along the way. And I love that. I think it's the balance is what I'm looking at as to when we talk about development and that economic development and all of those other things of those amenities, those are super important. And I'm in no way trying to take away from those. But I think it's the impact, some of the things that I'm hearing in just this is community feedback. And this isn't necessarily groups where I'm sitting in with professionals that understand the balance, but the community of where we're speaking about conservation, but we're also talking about elimination or, overbuild. And I think that for me is just trying to find that balance and create that education with patrons, right? So that there doesn't, yes, restrooms are important, but do we need a restroom, you know, every quarter mile?
Right. Sure. No.
Yeah, yeah. That's it. And I think it's that when you look at users and you're talking to them and eh, we're gonna go ride, we're gonna go use that trail. I'm a runner, and so I'm using it differently than, my best friend who's gonna bike. But the impact that I'm seeing from users who related to conservation that just the education, the piece that needs to be there and that balance and the impact to the ancillary green spaces and natural areas that I would just like to see, incorporated.
Good. Thanks. Ella, I want to give you a chance to say what you did, and then I'm hoping to get Ashton and Bill in on the conversation as well.
No, I'm just wondering what people see as the one of, some of the, it doesn't have to be one, but what are some of the bigger conservation issues that we face? And, whether or not people are dealing with them or they feel too overwhelming to even touch. But um, I I'm just going to throw out a few that come to mind for me, and that is um, invasive species, which management, which is a challenge, not only because it's so, persistent and, it was winning the war, some of those things, but it could take all of your budget to deal with it. But also because people don't recognize something that's green and flowering as something that might not be a good thing on the corridor, right? And so there's that one. And also the balance of, like whether we have green space to develop, and not development, encroachments on it. Every time we face new housing developments or changes to stormwater, we have issues like landslides that I'm dealing with. And so in the urban sections, which are fewer, we have those issues a lot with, well, even outside of city limits, we have issues of stormwater problems. And so that's another big one. But I wonder if it's like water quality or it's something else that people are dealing with that overlap those that with conservation.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Let's get the issues, the conservation issues that exist out onto the table. Um, just jump in and also use the chat. What issues are occurring along the P2P that we need to be aware of?
I'll second Ella's concern about invasive plants. So as I'm here in South Union Township, just outside Uniontown, and um, as nice as the South Union section is, it's kind of a guidebook of invasive species. So I try to raise the issue a little bit with our township supervisors. I don't know if they've heard it, but that's the one thing I see on a daily basis, at least in my area.
Yeah, thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
Ashton?
Uh, I know I said that the purpose of, that what I wanted to see from this was the conservation angle, but stepping back, rail trails by virtue of what they are, a railroad corridor, they're what I would kind of call, a spaghetti conservation project. They're thin and narrow. and maybe I'm rethinking my answer to that first question. You know, the benefit may be more for the wellness and community development and all that, but then because I tend to think more on the landscape scale. But I've also seen these trails connect. You know, I'm looking at projects where trails connect to larger conserved areas. You know, for instance, what the Land Trust and Rick is working with at down in Kanawha County. There's a potential for a trail to connect to for more, you know, where a landscape becomes a destination, not just another city or town. Um, so you know, I'm sort of rambling, but I'm trying to see where at least my work plays into this. You know, and not to diminish the corridor conservation concept. I love the rail trails. Uh, so, but I'd like, you know, the reason I wanted to sit in here was to see where I could fit, you know, and I'm looking at trails now that require tremendous rail trails that require tremendous amount of public support and funding. You know, for instance, in central West Virginia, it's common knowledge. We're looking at that Norfolk Southern piece in Charleston. You know, there's a whole team of 30 stakeholders looking at that and how to pull that off, and it's expensive. It's gonna require uh, it's gonna require the political clout to do it. Um, and but I think that you know the that clout's going to come from the town, you know, the towns that are going to see the economic benefit. Um, you know, the maybe the development around the trails, whether it's restaurants, bike shops, and that sort of thing, small business.
Yeah.
I didn't answer a question. I was just rambled on how, you know, what my perspective of these rail trails, you know, I'm trying to
Yeah.
figure out where I fit in, especially
Yeah.
how I can help with the P2P. You know,
Yeah.
I realize there might be some gaps that require some effort
Hmm.
to secure.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, I grew up in Parkersburg. I talked to people that use the North Bend Trail a good bit. You know, what I repeatedly hear is, you know, they're frustrated with the maintenance and, you know, riding through tall grass at times and that sort of thing. Uh, so I'm sure management on these things are a tremendous headache, hurdle to overcome, which comes back to the funding and getting the political support, getting the state parks and managers the resources they need.
And that comes down to
Hmm.
developing the advocacy base to change the mind of legislators,
Hmm.
make that investment. I
One
did
way
want to
to
respond to
think.
Bill about the invasive species because I was once talking to a railroad historian, and he said basically the railroad was a super spreader.
Right.
You know, those invasive species, they just drop it off of those rail cars all along the corridors. And that's so it's a real problem. It is a very real problem. The Japanese knotweed, for example, just eats up sections of the
Mhm.
corridor.
Right. Right. And that's part of our maintenance issues and where
Mhm.
our budget goes for spark, the park superintendents or for MRTC or others, like, that invasive species problems are going to be a big one. But going back to
But
the,
now we're down too far in the weeds.
yeah,
Ha 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 ha
exactly.
ha ha. Ha. That was a joke. I love it. I love the discussion.
Oh,
Just
Rick, your
kidding.
humor.
I
Uh,
couldn't let that one go. It popped into my mind a little while ago. I was like, I gotta use that.
Ella, going back to.
Yeah, well, I wanted to just go back to, looking at different properties. We have some real amazing stories to tell along with that railroad, super spreader kind of thought, right? And I think that the industry that has been spawned up around our corridors is part of the town's story. It's part of our trail story, and those it's maybe a complicated story, but the a lot of the other things that I kind of wanted to mention was just in the towns, whether there is the brownfields, if we're wanting businesses to pop up, whether there are the brownfield issues, but we do have a Superfund site that was remediated in Spelter that has now trail next to it. So we have all these spaces that have been obviously impacted by industry, um, and I just wonder about whether that brings more resources and more funding through the groups that are trying to deal with that past. Um, but I certainly don't think we should ignore that as part of the message that we're sending, is that we're kind of in a renewal or a restoration or a transition or some language to try to capture that.
Yeah,
The site in
great.
Spelter was remediated by Comores. It was private sector. The site here along the Harrison North Rail Trail, which is a Superfund site, was determined 25, 30 years ago, and nothing's been done on it because there really are very limited resources to address these Superfund sites. And that's a real challenge.
Yeah.
So
Is that
let me,
where is that? Is that right at Northview?
Yeah, it's right at the 25th Street trailhead.
Okay.
So just like Rick, I'm going to let you jump in a second, but
okay.
the trail goes over top of former brownfield superfund site. But in order to do maybe any development along the trail, um, the site is still needs to be remediated. Am I understanding that
Yeah,
correctly?
the corridor runs along the river. The site
Yes.
dumps into the river, so the river's heavily polluted there. And there's a lot of it was a glass plant, so it has all those glass plant toxic stuff along the trail. So they've capped the trail there, but it's in the ground all along there.
Yeah. So
And
any
in the water.
development that might occur, that's going to be a significant hurdle to that
Oh yeah, and
development.
it's a
Yeah.
terrible eyesore as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Rick, what's up?
I was thinking about what Ashton was saying about, there's different models of conservation. He was saying the spaghetti network, which we can all picture, all the trails linked up, and that's a good analogy in a sense. But he also mentioned a conservation landscape, like stepping back from just the green stripes on the map and the spaghetti itself, but everything what we call the matrix in between. And that's a really powerful model. And again, remember what I said about conservation, not wanting to hit anybody over the head. This state is so strange. I mean, it really is. If you've lived in other places and thought about conservation, it's different here. We have to be really careful. Everybody's tiptoeing around. They don't want to get the legislature mad at them and all this stuff. And, in some people's minds, the worst thing you could do is publish a map showing all your spaghetti network there of wonderful rail trails with a bunch of green stuff between them, and somebody saying that's where I live. That's what people worry about, that very seriously. So you don't want to go that route, but you could still think strategically about using the rail trails to link up parks and where those parks fit into the landscape, and just talk about that, get people thinking about it. In a way, if you do it right, you could use it as a marketing tool too. You could actually market this P2P as this conservation rail trail landscape, and the two things are just so inseparable, make them inseparable in some way. And because the people that come to do this, they're hip about conservation. They're highly educated people that like to ride their bikes and see new towns and places and all this stuff, and they'll get that part. You got to probably worry more about, local people in the matrix
Mm,
getting all worried and stuff. I mean, it's kind of a sensitive topic in this state, and I can appreciate that. My approach, if I was king, would be to be the bull in the china shop and just talk about it as much as possible, as loud as possible. But then you get into climate change and all this other stuff. But that's the way other people are thinking about these corridors and conservation at the landscape scale. They're thinking about climate change and migration corridors and things like that. People are actually talking about that in other places very seriously. I'm not saying we
Yeah.
shouldn't, but you get my point. There's a big benefit to linking rail trails and to conservation and vice versa.
Yeah, there's a group here in our area called Guardians of the West Fork. It's an environmental group that was created decades ago to protect the water quality, to improve the water quality on the West Fork River. And they meet every month and have been doing this like friggin' forever. And I've been to some of those meetings, and they're basically the same 4 or 5 people talking to
Sure.
themselves every
I
time.
know.
But they have an event, a kayaking event on the West Fork River each year. And that thing brings 80 to 100 people on the river that could get that message about water quality if they were to leverage that event. And they're hosting it, but they're not even talking about water quality. They just host it. And there's a possibility there of connecting that recreation with the environmental cause that is being missed every time.
Yep, totally agree.
Yeah.
Got to do it through people and people and
Yes.
organizations. That's
So,
Amy, do you have a part of this plan? I'm sure you do. I'm just going to say it anyway. Of a list of all the partners, in this thing. It'd be hundreds of organizations probably because it's such a big thing.
yeah, yeah, we're working to build the list out. I mean, we're
Right.
looking at a corridor that's, um, two 200 plus miles, so
Huge,
238.
huge.
yeah, so we're working to build it out, but we're not there yet. And the reason I'm showing this map, if you can see the map, is just, Rick, you were talking about landscape level thinking, and I just wanted to show everyone again, this is the landscape. This is the region. So
Absolutely.
we have just a few minutes left, and one thing I wanted to be sure to ask about was models that you've seen in other places that we can be thinking about. Again, if we want the P2P in the future to be a national model for like an outdoor recreation-based economy and a thriving region. What other places can we look to that have done this work well in respect to conservation?
Hmm.
It's not wild. It's not like the Taínos thing that she's done in northwestern Pennsylvania, which is
Hmm.
awesome. That is a
Hmm.
really cool model, but it's probably not appropriate here.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. There is a lot we can learn from the PA Wilds, but
Right,
yeah, it's
right.
different, but there's also a lot we can learn from
Sure.
them. Hmm.
Absolutely.
There's a term being used that I didn't know until I came to the Conservation Fund, but um, the term activation, and it is activating a natural resource economy, and it's typically based around whether it's local agriculture or mostly around recreation, and it's this activation concept is closely tied to conservation. It's they go hand in hand.
And who is using,
Uh,
I mean, who are you kind of modeling after when you're talking about that?
I
Ashton
think he's in
frozen.
Pocahontas County.
Oh, no.
I think he's in his camp somewhere.
yeah, so yeah, too bad we lost Ashton right there.
Uh,
So yeah, maybe we can follow up with him on that. Yeah. Hey Rick, there was something that you said earlier. There was a point that Kent made around conservation. You said, "Well, I see it a little bit differently." And I don't know if you fully made your point or not, but I want to get all perspectives. So if you didn't, what go ahead.
it's not so much different. It's complementary, really. It's just another way of looking at the whole thing. And I just go by my experience and the people I know and how we got involved. And it was very unintentional. I mean, my parents took us for walks on the weekends and spent a lot of time at the beach and all that. We were outdoors all the time. But it was just kind of, and I'm not saying, it's a generational thing to some extent, yes, but um, just some people really need a lot of hand holding and a lot of guidance and signage and super easy access, and other people don't. And I think the ones, I don't want to say we want to go for one or the other, not like that, but we want to bring more people into the fold, like Ken was saying, and they need the easier access and the signage, and it has to be intentional to use that word. But for other people, it's not. And for other people, it's just like there's a lot of green space around, and we were out in it.
Yeah.
You know?
Some people, that's what, I say some people need an invitation to trails and some people
Yes.
don't.
Yes. Right. And so, what does that mean, like from a planning and management standpoint? It means
Hmm.
that probably this the signs don't and the interpretation don't interfere with my experience. I'm downtown all the time. It's not wild down there, and I love it. So don't manage for people that don't need it necessarily. We want to manage for people that do need it, and not overdo it. I think this is part of what Marissa was saying. It's like don't overdo the whole thing, but make it easy for people to get involved. And I just happen to fall on the side of we also need lots of undeveloped green space to play in too, or with other side trails in too, or where you can go botanizing or birding or whatever too.
I think the
Yeah.
ideal, Rick, is if we can intentionally create an ecosystem that nobody knows is an ecosystem, so that they unintentionally find themselves enjoying that ecosystem
Yeah,
without it being beating them on the head with it. But in order to create that ecosystem, there's a lot of intentional work that needs to be done behind the scenes.
absolutely. I was lucky, I grew up in a rural area with great parents and it was easy for us. California's got a great state park system. We got the Sierras. I mean, I did all that as a kid and
Right,
it's
right.
who I am, That's the reason.
I
Yeah.
wanted to just
Okay.
touch upon that one, I don't know, I can't remember the name of it, but there's the model of like trail engagement where you go from trail user to ambassador, trail ambassador or trail advocate, or so whether you are like at the level of just being out there to enjoy it, and I'm sure that brings some level of care, like I care about it because I'm using it, but to get them to a level of I'm going to vote for this funding or I'm going to talk to this politician about, water quality or whatever, like
Right.
or I'm going to make it part of my job, right? I'm going to shift my career to it in some fashion, whether that's through nonprofit work or business or
I would just like to see
um,
a shift from users that I see every day. And I know this isn't, I'm thinking of more a consumer, right? They're using the system, some of these folks that I see as a consumer as opposed to a steward. And I think that for me, and at that level, at the municipal government level, is that education piece starts there. How
Yeah,
do you shift that mindset to then relate that to conservation at the bigger level? I think that's what I was trying to say earlier, and Rick, you helped
good.
lead me there just now, is that it's folks have because it's there and at least in this area and it's so readily available that folks don't under yes it's a transportation piece, it's all these things, but related to conservation you can't just be a consumer of it. You have to appreciate it, you have to be a steward for, and then watch that trickle out effect, in my opinion, to then the parks and the other green spaces and the offshoot trails that exist within all of those areas.
Good, Marissa. Thank you. So we're at just a little bit after one. I feel like Kent, you were maybe gonna say something.
Nothing
No?
important, I can assure
Yeah.
you.
It's always important. Thank you all for such a thoughtful, informative discussion. I think this was really useful. I appreciate it. You can reach out to me anytime if you have other thoughts that you want to share regarding to the master planning process. And I put a link in the chat. I just want to invite you to the other discussions. We have two next week. So if you think this was a fun way to spend your lunch hour, join us again next week. We have one at noon and the other one's at 4 p.m. And we have a couple in more in early March. So thank you again. Really appreciate you being here. And yeah, we'll talk soon. I see your note, Ella. I'll track that down.
Good. That was really fun. Thanks.
Yeah.
No.
All right, everyone. Have a good day. Have a good weekend.
I